This is Swim, Success with Music. Yo, what up, music fam? This is Walt. This is Success with Music. I am your music coach, and today we have a very special episode. Hey, listen, I want to jump right past our typical formalities here and move into our main topic for today. The reason for this move is we have an important guest for the show. His name is Andrew Hill. Andy Hill is a movie music specialist. Andy has worked with some of the biggest names in the music business as it relates to film. He's worked on some of the largest global film productions, all on the music side of things. So if you've ever been interested in how to score music for film, for movies, you are about to hear inside information from a guy that's done it for many, many years, right there at the heart of it all, right there in Hollywood. Hey, let's just go ahead and get to the show today. Hey, Swim family, this is Walt again. This is Success with Music, and today we are absolutely ecstatic about our guest. His name is Andrew Hill, Andy Hill, and he is the author of Scoring the Screen. So let me give you just a bit of background here. Andy is, number one, an amazing musician. And so I really, really want you guys to focus and listen to the knowledge that you're going to hear, because he's an industry expert in his area. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. But let me just give you just a bit of information about Andy. So he is a film music executive. He's a music supervisor. He's a producer. As I mentioned, he's an artist. So today he's going to bring us some specific knowledge from his book and life experience, for that matter, from Scoring the Screen. Andy, thank you so much for joining the Swim team today. We absolutely appreciate you being here today.
It's my pleasure, Walter. Does it matter that I can't swim?
No, it's okay. Okay. I can barely swim, by the way. I just took some lessons, believe it or not, at this age, which shall remain a secret. But yeah, I just took some swim lessons here last year, so I think we're in the same boat.
Yeah, I learned late. You know, the first during those formative years when I was supposed to get thrown into the pond, you know, to see if I would sink or not. Yeah. I just stayed away because the idea of getting water up my nose, it was a big deal to me. But finally, you know what did it is peer pressure. Seeing a really cool guy that I admired a lot, you know, dive right off the pier, and I figured I got to do it.
Hey,
anyhow, thank you. I'm happy to be here to talk about the book. This is it was indeed a labor of love, something I thought about doing for many years. And I had to get to a point where I felt like I could do it. I was qualified to do it. I, had gathered enough information over all the years that there really was something important to give back.
And that's amazing. So, and the listeners may not know this, but talk about your background. Talk about what you're referring to here. So your background is in film music, correct?
Yeah, but I'm a true musical mutt. I started out in the garage, like a lot of other guys my age, with a guitar. Yeah. Playing Beatles songs or whatever, and picking up certain things about harmony and about melody and about the way songs were constructed and so forth just from playing them. But, the emphasis was on performance, not really on the craft behind it. And we were doing mostly covers. I got older, figured I'm too old for this. I can't be playing other people's music. And I went off to film school, which seems counterintuitive, because I just had this notion that I could do something musical with film. And I loved them both, and I always have, always will. I love them equally. And I, was able to, fortunately, things were flexible enough then. It was NYU in the early days, not long after Martin Scorsese had been a student there. Wow. But it was still very wide open. You could sort of make your own agenda. And I just said, I'm going to study music for film, even though there's no real curriculum for it. Then you got to cut like 10 years after I finished there, because I spent the next 10 years on the road, still trying, giving my all to the idea of a record contract, which was still the holy grail.
Exactly,
we're talking about the 80s. You could still hope to find some manager, some big shot,
right?
Somebody, nowadays they would call them influencers, but somebody who would wander into the club on Saturday night and say, "This is the band I want."
Right.
And we came very, very close to that. It was like that incredibly dazzling and at the same time painful thing of not knowing if you're going to get the deal or not. And once I became completely convinced that rock and roll stardom wasn't going to happen, that's when I returned to film. And to sort of cut to the chase, I got myself to Hollywood, thinking I know enough about both of these things that I could offer myself up as a composer. And this is really the beginning of the story of the book, because the first thing I did, in show business, you've heard this before, you fake it till you make it.
Right.
You don't say, "No, I can't do that."
Exactly.
Say, "I'll find a way." And as I say, I knew just enough about both these things to think that I could fake it until I made it. But immediately I started looking around. Okay, there's got to be at least one book. There's got to be at least one book I can find that is some composer's chronicle of how he made it, or some expert looking at the great music of Hollywood films from 1940 through 1980 and saying, this is how they did it. Nothing. There was nothing out there.
Really?
There were some interesting books that were mostly made of interviews. There were some books about how to handle the business side of it.
Sure.
And there were a couple of books about the purely technical side of writing music for film, which has a lot to do with synchronization. Mm-hmm. It's the meshing of the two, the synchronizing of the music with the film that makes the magic. And that is a craft. That's the craft part of it. It's not so much the art part of it. So I couldn't find anything. And for many years, what happened then, basically, I discovered that nobody puts out help wanted ads, or Craigslist ads for composers.
Exactly.
In Hollywood.
Right.
They just don't do it. You get those jobs because you have a pre-existing relationship with someone. You went to school with them. You did a little indie film with them. Maybe you shot their student project, something like that. Or you're a big deal, and they want you for your name.
Right.
But there was no fixed route. So I took the first serious job that I was offered that would allow me to actually continue to make music, mm-hmm. at least as a behind-the-scenes person, and that was at Disney.
Wow.
And I was very lucky. The timing could not have been better. It was the beginning of what they now call the Disney Renaissance. Mm-hmm. And a whole new crew was in there from Paramount, Jeffrey Katzenberg, Michael Eisner, those people. Mm-hmm. And their mission was to remake this little family company into an international powerhouse.
Sure.
And, by any measure, they did. And a lot of it happened during the 10 years that I was there, because those were the years of Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King. And for every one of those movies, there was a team. There's always a guy on top who's essentially making big creative calls about, okay, we're going to try and break a single from Beauty and the Beast. Who should we have to sing it? And that guy is dealing with the Celine Dions mm-hmm. of the world, putting together the soundtrack deal and the business aspect of it. But then there's some other guy who's in the trenches with the composers every day, and the arrangers and the orchestrators and the musicians on the stage where the music is being recorded. And I was just lucky enough to be that guy.
Wow.
Because I kind of volunteered. I said, early on when they were paying me nothing and I'm not even sure what my title was, the question sort of goes up. Can anybody go to the stage and help out the composer? And my hand goes up because again, I knew enough about music and how music was made for film that I was maybe foolish enough to think I could actually be an asset.
Yeah.
And little by little, year by year, I learned how to be an asset. And sometimes it was by keeping my mouth shut. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it was by saying the thing that nobody else wanted to say.
Right.
But knew to be true. Like, this just isn't good enough, guys. Or, we're going to have to bring in a different singer. That sort of thing. And it was very, very high tension, tight wire kind of stuff. But I loved it.
Wow. That's like an amazing story.
I loved it. And I worked with so many people with, Robin Williams, Jeremy Irons.
Really?
Anna, Stephen Sondheim, Warren Beatty, Whoopi Goldberg, of course, on Sister Act.
Sure.
Just because everybody was coming through Disney's gates in those days. And that gave me a tremendous amount of experience also in watching real producers, first-rate veteran producers.
Right.
And man, they are so smooth. Because artists are temperamental, or they can be, especially if it's a bad day, and things aren't going right in the studio, and the voice just isn't there that day for whatever. The producers have to be incredibly patient. Mm-hmm. and judicious in what they say, because you don't want to put the artist off their game.
Sure.
At all. And I learned that watching producers, mostly with the pop records that Disney did in those days. Mm-hmm. And then I learned this whole other thing from watching the orchestral recordings, which is that's like a little small-scale D-Day invasion. So many things have to go right because so much money is riding on it. Wow. It's an hour with a Hollywood orchestra of 70 pieces can easily end up being $50,000.
That's bananas.
Or more, depending on the level of the talent that's there. So, and it might take 16, 20 hours
really
to record the score if you're talking about something like Lord of the Rings or Lion King.
That is amazing. Wow.
And at every step of the way, you're learning stuff. And at every step of the way, you can believe me, Walter, I was taking those scores, my copy, because I always got a booth copy as the producer, home with me, and putting them in a binder and saying, one day I will use this to give aspiring composers who just come into the business that book that wasn't there for me.
Wow. That's amazing. So let's go there real fast here, because a lot of our listening audience, they are in the aspiring stage. They are trying to get into this world, this amazing world, quite frankly, that you had the privilege of being in the front row, a participant, which is just mind blowing. And again, for those who are listening, this is just an amazing opportunity for you just to grab some information. So for that person that's on the outside looking into that world out there in Hollywood and in the major film industry, what does it take for someone to start to take steps to get into that world? The most common mistake is for people to think they need representation. They need advocates. I got to have a lawyer. I got to have an agent. I got to have a publicist. I got to have a personal manager. I need all these props because otherwise I won't seem legitimate. Right.
I won't seem credible. And it as many people, it only takes being in the business a year, maybe not even that much, to learn that it's a catch-22. None of those people are interested in you until you've already shown what you can do. So the name of the game is, at all costs and by whatever means, hopefully honest, hopefully earnest, and hopefully passionate, you get your name on an independent feature film.
Ah, okay.
And it can be a $10,000 film that your neighbor made